Hello, welcome to the February 11th, 2025 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you've not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, so if it's Cubase Elements, AI, LE, Artist, or Pro, which version number, so if it's 12, 13, or 14. Also, if which operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed, and I will go through all the questions chronologically as asked. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. You should have an index of all of the topics covered in today's live stream, posted several hours after the live stream ends. So we can look for that, and there'll be timestamps to quickly navigate exactly to a particular topic. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We could also want to give a special thanks to Jan from Stockholm for creating that site, the cubaseindex.com. We have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude, who will give a special thanks to them. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community experience. And we'll give a special extra thanks to Jazz Dude for his help with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord site. So, wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community there. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Just a quick programming note, I won't be able to host the live stream this upcoming Friday. I'll be speaking at the Texas Music Educators Association Conference in San Antonio, right in the middle of the live stream time. We will be on our normal live stream schedule starting again next week, but just a quick note that this Friday there will be no live stream. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So we see Stefan checking in from Sweden. We have Tim K, whose cat Buddy is waving hi to all the other pets, including Stella, Mark Rabin's dog, and my cat Steven. All right. We see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset, UK. We have Mark Rabin from Montana with his dog Stella. So everyone give a big woof to Stella. And Mark Rabin is experiencing minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And he's going to be in the studio all day. So it sounds pretty cold. And it's minus 42.7 Celsius. All right. And of course, Stella's dog wants to go out for a walk. All right. All right, so we see Troca on, just saying, hey guys, this question is, if I only like some stuff on a content set and want to organize, only way I get to split unwanted from unwanted is rating, or could I delete some bits of it somehow on Cubase 14 Pro? So probably the easiest way is to do the rating. When we look at the content sets, and just kind of for IP and IP protection, when we go to our audio, when we look at the particular files, let me just open up the library manager. So often when we go to look at our Cubase Nuendo files, we may see when we go to look at, let's say, a content library like Blockbuster, we could go to details, and we're going to see that all of the, while Blockbuster may have several hundred files, all those files are going to be within this one particular VST sound set. So if there isn't a way to just take, since this is one file as opposed to a collection of up 200 to 300 files or however many files are in this collection separately. Cubase can read it separately, but when it's installed or moved, it's just going to be moving one content set, which includes all those files. So if you wanted to differentiate between different loops, as you mentioned, probably the best way is to use the rating system, where you can say we only want to view content that's going to be like 3 stars or 4 stars, etc. So, but there, with the included content, there isn't going to be a way of getting rid of some files and keeping other files within a content set. All right, so we see Fly V checking in from Winnipeg. It's Vince checking in from Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us today. Great to see you on. Mark Rabin just says he has a similar question to Troca. It says, regarding templates, when I save dialog, does not show my latest names titles. I can find them in Explorer and Hub, but not in the save dialog. So when you save a template, I'll just come over here. Let's say I want to save this as a template. I will save it as, we'll call it Mark Rabin, February 11th, 2025. Okay. So I will save this as a template. So when we want to find that template, when we go to like a new project, we would go under more, and then we would just see our Mark Rabin, February 11th, 2025. So if I wanted to reveal this into Finder or Explorer, you could just right click to delete, or if you wanted to delete that particular one, you could just select it. But when you go to the hub, just go to more, and that's where you could see all of your templates, and you could adjust and edit directly right there. All right. Mark Raven is looking for anyone willing to share warmth in his frigid temperatures in Montana. We have Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. Great to see you on. We have Uno Memento from Finland, where it's a warm -5 centigrade or Celsius. All right. All right, my chat field has already jumped on me. Let me find my way back to where it was. All right, great to see Benny on. All right, Troca just says, I think replying to Mark, Cubase 11 very recently, still didn't try that, but despite all my love for Cubase, never liked the media browser so much, and that template in Cubase 11 is quite easy, so. Okay, you see Jazz Dude posting a picture, a link on how to use Backbone. All right. Okay, so we have Marvin Earl just asking me what's up. So thanks for joining us today. All right, 808 King asks, hi G, I'm doing my first rock mix using a tempo track. Can you show me how you would import and set that up? Also show how would you use the warp tool if needed on all tracks to fix if needed. Okay, so let's say, if you want to do, okay, so if you're doing your first rock mix using a tempo track, so once you have a tempo track, so I'm not sure if you have extracted the tempo track from the particular, from a file. So let's say if I want to come here, let's say roughly our tempo is 100 beats a minute on this project. But if I want to take, let's say my kick drum, and let's do a quick tempo detection on this. The kick doesn't play all the way through, so let me just, probably my overheads might be a better choice. So let me go to my project menu, and let's say we're going to do a tempo detection of the file, and I'm going to take it out of musical mode here. All right, so if we had taken it out of, so if we did a tempo map of that, so you could just kind of work with that. So then, once you have like the tempo set up, what's really good about that and using it in, let's say, a rock mix is being able to do stuff with your effects that are kind of tempo synced. So if I wanted to put an echo on these guitars, so I could just come over here, I'm going to add an effects track to the selected tracks. I want to put a studio delay on it. So now at this point, we could choose to have our delay, instead of just being in milliseconds, if we click on the sync button, we could say, okay, I want a quarter note delay on the guitars. So as we kind of start off. So regardless of what the tempo is, we could have our delays timed. So we say, okay, I just want this to be so if I wanted this to be tempo synced, but I want it to be like a half note delay. So, with the tempo track, you're able to do a lot of different things. So, once, so if you have, when you ask, can you show me how you would import and set that up? So if you have a tempo track, one is you can choose to import the tempo track. So if we have a track that's fluctuating in tempo, we can choose to import the tempo track. Another way of doing it is to import a standard MIDI file. And one thing, there's a preference or setting that can throw that off and could ignore. Usually it's enabled by default, but if we go to MIDI under preferences or settings to MIDI file, you could uncheck ignore master track events. And then when you import a MIDI file, the tempo track can go along with that and can be extracted from a MIDI file. Now, also also show me how you'd use the warp tool if needed on all tracks to fix. So let's say if I wanted to do, I could place like all of the tracks here into a folder. So I have a folder, and we could enable what we call phase coherent audio warp. So you see this little icon, and what that's going to allow me to do is to, as I want to come over and we want to do just some quick editing, I can just come over here. I'm going to switch my warp tool to free warp, and once I kind of come right over here, you can say, okay, I want to put my free warp markers, and we could have all these different tracks selected. So say we'll come here, and I'm going to just put in like my free warp markers, and we can put these across kind of all my tracks where we have kick, snare. So all the tracks, if you want to do kind of global warping, so once we have those warp markers, we can just simply kind of come over here. So if the whole band kind of maybe came in early, we could just simply move multiple tracks and adjust their warp markers across all of the tracks at once. And the key to doing this is to make sure, if I move this warp marker, it may move every warp marker after that. So place a warp marker after, so that when we move this, it's only going to move that one particular hit, and it won't affect from this point on later. So let me know if that's helpful for your 808 King. All right, Mikhail asked, hi, simplest way to get the step designer pattern to MIDI notes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to come here. Let's put step designer. I think maybe we'll have. All right, so let's say I'm going to come to my MIDI notes here. So I'll get to my MIDI inserts. Let's come over here to step designer. All right, so say I want to come over, and as we're going to play back a particular voice here, I'll create all right, so now as we would okay, so let's say, if we have our MIDI note here, and so let's say if we wanted to, and we have it going through our MIDI plugin here, if we wanted to turn that into MIDI, one is when we go to the actual track is you could actually move this little line here, and that would record the step designer. But another method could be to just come over to your MIDI and choose to freeze MIDI modifiers, and that way we could take kind of any particular pattern that we wanted, and then we could render that step designer pattern directly inside and render the MIDI out to a particular part. So try just using either recording through the plugin, or just at this point come over and choose to freeze MIDI modifiers. So, and then you could have that as MIDI data in the event. All right. All right, wonderful to see Jan from Cubase Index on. And we have Michael Graybill checking in from Dallas, Texas. Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Wonderful to see you on. We have Balsa from Montenegro. He says, come visit sometime. Yeah, so we might try to do a European vacation this summer. So we'll see. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. Troca is sending love from Porto. So one of the areas we're thinking maybe family vacation to is Portugal this summer. So. Wonderful to see Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas, and Mikhail's checking in from Sweden. All right, so we have Lewis from Massachusetts. Can you explain what gets transformed to VST Live from Cubase when exporting? For example, do plugins in Cubase get transferred to VST Live? Should I bounce all tracks first? So I don't think that the plugins, let's go ahead and just set up a quick project here. All right, so let's say we have just kind of very kind of simple project, and I'll add a couple plugins in a group, and maybe a MIDI part here. So let me add an instrument track. Okay, I'm going to send all my drums to a group. And let me add all these to an effect. Okay, so now let's so is it going to be under just seeing if we just import I may not have it installed. Let me just that it showed up under here. Let me just open up VST Live. All right, let me just try. So I thought we export as a media project. I may not have some of the components installed. So I don't think I have the little, I thought it was installed when VST Live was installed, that the link would just show up. Let me just make sure. Oh, okay, we go to VST Live, so let's export this project, sorry. All right, so it doesn't look like we can export the delays or like the effects. And let me just come over and see if these plugins, like if I put EQ on the overheads, if this is carried over. So let's go here to VST Live. Sorry for my brain cramp. My son just got home early because we're expecting a big snowstorm. Here, let me just... All right, let me just make sure I saved it to here. Okay, I just saved it to my desktop, so let's get VST Live. All right, just wait, so I'm not sure if so it looks like it. Let me just I think I have two different VST Live versions here. Just okay, let me just. So it looks like, like the media files were carried over. Let me just try one more time. So it looks like during like the export that and I can see if I can have this kind of dialed in for the next live stream, but it looks like the actual media is carried over, but not the plugins. So I think that's how it's set up. But I could kind of work on it for next live stream. I'll make a note to do that. Sorry about that, Lewis. So we have Marvin Earls he's checking in from Newport, Rhode Island. We have Ben Tyerman from Manchester, UK. John Koskian from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right. We have Prod N Kashave. Thanks for joining us. All right, we see Val from Vienna. Craig Noble says yellow from snowy West Virginia. So I think we're having the same storm coming our way. All right, Alex Morgan says, "Hey Greg, is there a logical editor command that could automatically add an automation node at a predetermined value, i.e., a key command that would add a node at value 90 on CC7? Thanks." All right, so let's take a look, see if we can do it. Don't think we can, but let's try. Okay, so let's say I want to come here. We go to our CC7. And let's see if we could insert. Type is equal to controller. And the MIDI controller value, we'll say our subtype is going to be equal to CC7. I'll just make sure I have just seeing if we could actually select, make sure I have the logic right here. Okay, so we could select the nodes. If we choose to insert, yeah, so I don't think it's going to do that, but if you always want that as a function, one way to approach it might be through, if we go to the MIDI insert effects and we go to MIDI control, and then we could say, okay, I want MIDI CC7 to be at 90. And then every time that the track goes into play, you could just do that. So let's say now if I come here, I'm going to select, let's say, the track here, and let's see if, since we have the note control, if we have that in the MIDI CC, and we go to freeze MIDI modifiers, if that writes it in. Don't think it did. But if you always want that to be kind of the starting off point, let me just take a look at this event and see if we go to the list editor. So I think that this event is going to be on the track, but maybe not the event. So, but check out the MIDI control plugin, because if you need it like static levels for like modulation or expression or MIDI volume, you could set it all here within this particular MIDI plugin. But I'll see if I could work on it some more to see if I could get it automatically inserted in. Generally, the logical editor is good at extracting parts and manipulating existing data, but it's not as designed for entering in particular data. It's kind of modifying existing data is kind of the intention. Great. See, Michael Teams has passed on 1 gallon of baked potato soup for Mark Rabin, probably because ice cream would be insult to injury. All right, we see Bratman Studio on. Great to see you from Whittier, California. And we see Jim Lundgren checking in from Huddinge, Sweden. Thanks for joining. I'll have to look that up on Google Maps, see where it is. It sounds like an interesting place. Right, my chat field jumped. All right. Okay, you see Ball says, hi Greg, do you have time to check out what is the best way to detect tempo in a vocal a cappella and then change it to match the beat or project tempo? Yeah, I mean, sometimes the vocals aren't necessarily going to always fall on the downbeat. So if you have, let me see if I could find the project that Tiago had sent over. I'll just check, see if it's maybe still in. But, sometimes, it's going to really depend upon the actual vocal material. Like, is the vocals coming in on the downbeat, or is it the vocal melody always like starting on beat 3 or beat 2? So those things can make kind of a big difference. And if you want to also send me a project that you want to work on, I'd be happy to kind of show that if copyrights will allow me to do that, or I could show it to you privately. But once you know kind of what the original tempo is, you can just place it into, audio warp mode to get it to fit. All right, Craig Nobles asks, when recording MIDI in Cubase 13 and accidentally have auto-quantize on, resetting, undoing quantize doesn't seem to work, seems to have changed with update from 12. All right, so let's say if I want to come over here, I'm going to set my auto-quantize, and I'll set it to quarter notes, and I'll just record some MIDI data here. I'll load up a quick kit so we can hear the result. Okay, so let's say I want to auto-quantize to quarter notes. And I'll just put my click track on. So say okay, so now when we go to playback, we'll see that the drums are now going to be quantized to quarter notes. All right, now the question is, if we undo, let's say if we go to the edit menu and reset quantize here, I can, make sure that the event is selected. So now that I've done that, this is, so if we undo, so it seems like that's working. I know it's not in 13. I could try it in 13 very quickly. I think I still have it installed. See if that makes any difference. All right, so let's try the same thing in 13. So I'm going to put auto-quantize on, quarter note as our quantize. And make sure that we have click on here. All right, so let's look at our part here. So you can see that as we quantize, everything is kind of quantized to quarter notes here when we look at it. And let me go to edit and reset quantize. You can see kind of the rhythm that I played. So it seems to, make sure that one, you have the event selected. But if I undo the reset quantize, we have our quarter notes. That's what we did the auto quantize on. And again, reset quantize with the event selected. It's back to our original. So let me know if I'm doing anything differently than you, but it seems to work in 13 and 14 for me. All right, so Mark Raven says, thanks, Greg, for fielding the question. The only issue I have is that I usually version my templates like 2Kit 2025, version 5B1, etc., and I have trouble remembering what I called my templates. Okay, so I guess if you can't remember what your template was for, maybe once you open the template, one thing you could do is, I think within your template, if you go to the project menu to Notepad, maybe you could leave a note for yourself. So when you open it up, I know that you might have to open the template up first, but maybe as you're kind of building templates, you could leave yourself a little cheat sheet in the project Notepad, and that will be opened with the particular template if it's saved with the template. So maybe you could use that method to help out. All right. Jazz Dude letting everyone know that Backbone is free to get at Plugin Boutique if you buy anything there until March. Sounds like a great deal. I saw people were buying like a cheap compressor plugin to get the $150 Backbeat, or Backbone rather. So Carlos Arturo Poveda asks, hi Greg, is there any way to back up the pages that you create to a MIDI remote device? I have a Nano Control 2, and last week my pages disappeared, leaving only the 4 default pages. So I think once you're in the MIDI remote here, we will just take a look at it, and once we go to like the script area, so you click on the little settings and go to scripts, and then you want to just come over here and export your script, and that will include your own user created mapping pages. And then conversely, if you need to re-import that, just come over here to import script and select it, and then all the mapping pages associated with that device that you've made will be recalled. Okay, so we see Nick checking in from a rather cold Essex in the UK. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so Content Scientists ask, if I already own Absolute 5 and I'm on the fence about Absolute 6, is there a way to do a trial like the 60-day trial of Cubase 14? I think so, but let's check just to make sure. So I'm going to... So I'm not sure if they're, I think like the big difference is obviously the Steinberg licensing, but let me see. And I think the one new instrument that's in there for over 5 is going to be the FM Lab and Halion 7. So let me see if there's a Halion 7 trial. Yeah, so you could do the Halion 7 trial. So if you have Absolute 5 going to 6, it's going to be the new licensing. And Halion 7, which would include the FM Lab, which is going to be the FM synthesis. And so you could try the Halion version, which is going to be the difference from Absolute 5 to Absolute 6. So you could do the trial version of that, and then you get a sense of what's in Absolute 6 over that. So I would say the Halion and FM Lab are definitely worth it. So, all right, so we see Martin checking in from Germany. Thanks for being online with us today. Yeah, we see. All right, we see Pertti Komenen also checking in from Finland. Michael Teams has started his ice cream distribution. All right. All right, Mike from Long Island, New York. My wife lived in Long Island until she was in like 7th grade. Asks, is there a way to make a command to reset EQ and low and high frequency? Thanks. All right, so if we are here, let's say we have our channel EQ. So if you go to the EQ area, I think if we go to the settings, so let's go to, let's say, to our channel. All right, so I'll turn these on and off here. Okay, so let's see, there is a Command A or Shift A would, let me see, that would deactivate the EQ. Let me see if it's Option. So Option, Alt or Option plus A would deactivate the EQ, but if you want it to be reset, I think you could have a default preset and set up an EQ to do that. So let's see if, but this is going to be kind of a different section. So there is kind of a reset EQ. Let's see if it's addressable just in key commands. So they could be bypassed. Let me just look for the, so if we have our EQ set here and we right click, so there's going to be a default preset. And let's see. So if I save this, let's see if I have this. Let's go to the key commands. Okay, and I'm just going to assign this to, so if we go to edit to reset to default, and we have that as our settings. Now I'm going to assign this in my MIDI remote and see if we could. So that was just a key command that I had created for that function, but it is user assignable. So let's say so it doesn't do the it won't turn this on or off, but if the EQ is kind of set, I'll just say reset to defaults, and then you could reset that. And let's see if there's a way to bypass the high cut, low cut filters. Yeah, so I think we could reset the EQ, but maybe not the high cut, low cut filters. So if you had this kind of set up, you could just choose to reset the defaults and do that, but it's not going to unfortunately take care of it because this is kind of in the pre section. Let me just look in the pre, see if there's any key commands there. Like in the mixer or something. Yeah, I don't see anything for the filters for the high cut, low cut, but the reset to default value you could have for the EQ bands themselves. All right, so we have Arif B saying hello to everyone. John Costigan it's 27 degrees. My voice. All right, we have Recyclop checking in from Finland. Glad you can make it. All right, we see Vows has started using Razor instead of Waves L2 lately. It sounds so much better. It's incredible. So yeah, Razor's wonderful dynamics plugin. All right, so we see a follow-up question from 808 King who asks, thanks Greg, do I just set up one tempo track, probably on a snare, the whole drums, or do I make a tempo track and work off of that? So, I would tend to do the tempo detection from the actual events. A lot of times there's lots of bands that record and they kind of think of it like an analog tape machine where there's no real tempo setting, because on analog tape you wouldn't really, there's no grid to edit against. So, but I would do just a tempo detection for a live, if you wanted to have a live band and make your editing easier. So, and it could be, and you would just do it for one, there's going to be one tempo track, because, hopefully you're not going to have multiple tempos at the same time. I guess it could be okay for some avant-garde music, but generally things would have a single tempo. All right, great to see Pro Wash DFW checking in. Be flying through Dallas on a layover on Saturday. All right, Louis Che says, hello, Greg from Chicago. Sometimes when I try to color a track, it does not want to work. It is not locked. What can cause one specific track to not respond? So it could depend, you can think of events and tracks can be colored. So if I color this event, let's say I want to make this event kind of a light blue, and I come over here and I change the track color. I could change the track color, but since I've overwritten the color for this particular event, this event will stay. So I could change the track color since I haven't specifically selected a color for this event. This event will change with the track color. But since I've specifically chosen an event color for this, it's not going to automatically change when we have the track. So this has a hierarchy, and if we have specifically chosen to colorize an event, that setting will persist when selecting different track colors. So if you just kind of even come over here, say, okay, I want to change that, and this isn't changing, it's probably because it's been manually done. And if you wanted it to match, you could just come over here and manually reset the event. So, but if you set a color for an event, that will have a priority over setting the track color. And if you change the track color, the event color will maintain its color. So let me know if that's helpful or in line with what you're working with. Great to see DL White checking in from Fort Worth, Texas. All right, you see Mark Rabin just says, just sending appreciation to everyone. All right, Balsa asks, hi Greg, what is the best way to find the key of a note or 808 that is sent to sampler track and then set the MIDI keyboard to play just the right notes? All right, so let's say if I have, let me just look for, just add a drum machine track. All right, and let's go ahead and all right, so I want to take this, let me just adjust the decay of this. All right, so say I have something like that. So, and we want to figure out what the pitch is of that particular note, because it could not be, it might be completely independent. So let me just. All right. All right, so let me just trim this sample a bit here. Okay, so if we want to determine what the pitch is, so say we have this kind of 808 sample. All right, so to do that, what I would probably do is just look at it in VariAudio. So we could see that when we look at this, that probably the pitch is going to be a G#0. So if I wanted to drag that particular sample like to the sampler track. Let me just see if it was. Okay, so if I take this now to the sampler track, I can just come right over here. Let's drag this. All right. And let me just render that so I don't have the excess tail. So I'll just bounce the selection, drag it to the sampler track. And we can say, okay, I want the root note here to be G sharp. So now so let's say if I put a bass synth on as well, so we have our sampler track. Okay, so sampler track, and let's load up a synthesizer. So let's do something like a retro log. All right, so say we have that. And now I want to play both these at the same time with the same keys. So you can see that they're kind of matching up. So once you have the sample, look at it in VariAudio, and then you can get an idea of what the pitch is inside of VariAudio. And I think that you might also be able, this might be in WaveLab, but let me just check statistics here. And WaveLab can give you the pitch in its analysis. Yeah, it doesn't look like the pitch is indicated here. But yeah, just look at it inside of VariAudio, and that could give you a sense of what the actual pitch is going to be of that particular file. So when you go to do the edits of it, you can get an idea of what the pitch is in VariAudio, and then just drop that in, and within the sampler track, just match the particular. So as soon as we go to our sampler track, then set the root key accordingly. All right. We have Brad Melismillan checking in from Saskatoon. Thanks for joining us. All right, Benny asks, question, is it possible to set a VST instrument window to close when I switch to another track so it doesn't stay open all the time? Cubase 14 Pro. So I think, that it's not necessarily, the window will stay open until it's closed. So I think if we come here that, we could have a keyboard shortcut for edit VST instrument. So let me just come over here. I'm going to assign it in my MIDI remote. So let's come over to the MIDI remote and say edit VST instrument. All right, so now we'll apply that to this button here. So now anytime that I am working on the VST instrument, I could select this, close that, I could go to, and while it doesn't automatically open, I could use one button to open and close the VST instrument for the selected track. So give that a try. Let me know if that could work for your workflow, so it doesn't automatically update, because sometimes you may want to do editing on one part but still see the instrument and edit against another selected part. That happens a lot. So, selecting one track shouldn't open and close, but you could easily assign the edit VST instrument commands, so sampler track, retro log, groove agent. So if you assign that to like a MIDI remote or a keyboard shortcut, you could kind of easily manage your windows, I think, pretty easily. All right, so we see from FlyV asks, how do you arrange a song's segments, in what order? So I would say there's no perfect answer with that. A lot of times people, traditional kind of, I would say traditional studio workflow would be something along the lines of this, where you're going to see like kick, snare, like drums first. It's often going to be kick, snare, hi-hats, toms, overheads. That's pretty typical. There's nothing that's absolute about anything, just as long as you know where to find your tracks. And then people often will do bass, guitars, keys. One thing that I like to do on mine, if it's just about like the questions pertaining to kind of like the track order, and again, there's absolutely no set rules with this. One thing that I like to do personally, especially with this song where you're kind of focused on the vocals, sometimes as you're doing edits, being able to maintain that focus is a good thing. So sometimes I'll do a divided track list. If we get a project and we say divide track list, and often we see like tempo map or markers up top. One thing that I like to do is to place like the vocal track up top, so that because I think it's always a good reminder to like, okay, the song, for a lot of songs, the song is serving the vocals, and I want to be able to scroll up and down and always have my lead vocal track present, so I could see how that's relating to all the other tracks. So that's one thing that I like to do. So I may override and have kind of traditional track arrangements, and there's absolutely no right or wrong answer. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. But I do like to, in a lot of sessions, put like the vocal track, if I'm mixing kind of like a full song with vocals, and it's very kind of vocal centric, where it's not something that's electronic, where it's maybe just like a little vocal hook or vocal element, but it's not the primary focus of the song. But you could just put those tracks in the upper pane, and once you go to your project to divide track list, then you could move it to anywhere you want or move it into the upper area, and this way we could have kind of independent scrolling of your different tracks. So let me know if that makes sense for you, Vince. All right, so we see from Charles S. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, let me find my spot where it was. Okay, so I'm back. So Charles' question is, I've been having problems exporting audio from Cubase Pro 13. When I export the file, it doesn't carry any audio. It's very random. Example, yesterday I exported 5 WAV files. 2 did not have audio, 3 did. So it says almost never works as intended. Sometimes when I shut my computer and restart, the files are correct. It's almost like Cubase doesn't write correctly or fast enough. Any suggestions? So one of the things that it could be that you might want to look at, so I'm not sure if you're doing individual stems or if you're doing like multiple songs in a cycle marker, but sometimes what I see people do is, let's say if we have a track selected here, so let's say we have this going into stereo in, and if we have the track record enabled, so let's say if I solo this track and we go to export audio mix down and I want to do multiple, let's say I'll just come over here, let's just choose, let's say single, so I'll say stereo out and I want to create an audio track. So when we do this, I'm going to export, but I'm going to have this track record enabled. So I think that may have the track come up empty. All right, so we'll go to the bottom of our project. We should. All right, let me just. Try it one more time here. Okay, so we see now our file is empty because this track, our vocal track, was record enabled. So make sure that no tracks, like the tracks that are coming out empty, make sure that they're not record enabled, because otherwise they could just show up. So you see here, now if I choose to solo this track and it's not exported, I go to export audio mix down and we do the same thing. We'll create an audio track. And now we can see the new file has audio in it because it wasn't kind of blocking the audio signal because it was record enabled. So check to see, make sure that like the two that did not have audio, that they weren't set to record enable. All right, Rob Schmedicke asks from Tarpon Springs, thanks you for joining us today. Could you please explain how to adjust hit points from a live drum pattern to align with MIDI drum pattern? Is there a quick trick other than going beat by beat? Okay, so let's say we have, I'll just do new project quickly, and let's say we want to take a drum loop. Okay, so say we'll take this loop So let me just slow it down just a little bit. Okay, so Rob's, okay, we went to how to adjust hit points from a live drum pattern to align with the MIDI drum pattern. Okay, so let's say we'll do a MIDI pattern. Let me just load a MIDI pattern in. Okay, so, all right, so we have this. And we want to take the feel of this and apply it to this file. So what I would do is open up the quantize panel. So we can see our quantize panel here. And I'm just going to drag the MIDI event over. So now what I want to do, and I'm going to make sure that audio warp is turned on. So let's go ahead and when we open this up, I want to do a quantize. And as we do this, if we look at kind of our hit points here, we look at our loop, I'm going to quantize. So I drag the MIDI in. We created a groove from the MIDI part. And I'm going to select this and I'm going to say quantize, and we should see these shift. And now that we play these two together, so let's say I want to do a different feel here. So if I have this MIDI pattern in, I could come over, drag that MIDI pattern, and again select this, quantize, and now I could have the audio drum loop follow with the MIDI drum loop. We have all. And if I want to take these two events and quantize those, so now we can so if we wanted to unquantize this, here there's a little tension there. So just take the MIDI part, or you could take the audio part, drag it in, and then quantize the MIDI to the audio, either way around. Okay. Okay, so we have Razel Zamini checking in from Denmark. RFB saying hello to everyone. All right, Troca asks, Sensei Greg, in Cubase 14 Pro, looper and a sampler scenario, what hierarchy would you use to clock, noting that I'm sketching on a sampler first and adding layers with looper, which is fed by VST and instruments. So is it a hardware sampler or... So let me know, Troca, if it is a hardware sampler and a hardware looper. So it says, what scenario would you use to clock? So a lot of times, loopers and, it would depend. I would, if you're kind of wanting to sync external loopers or samplers, a lot of them, may be set just to, just to fire off a sample and then re-trigger the sample from MIDI. So, but if it's going on for, I wouldn't trust it for like a minute or two for that to stay in sync, because the clock is going to drift on a device. But I would probably come over here if it's going to be, I would probably do the project synchronization. And if your devices have MIDI timecode, I would do that. Some of those devices may only do MIDI clock, and you could send MIDI clock out and have the MIDI clock follow the project position. But MIDI clock is only going to be 24 pulses per quarter note. So while it's okay for starting like a drum machine in MIDI, the audio itself, after, a few seconds, it's just kind of playing with its own clock, because the audio clock isn't resolved. So I would try MIDI timecode first and then MIDI clock if the devices don't have it. A lot of those hardware devices don't do any external sync, and it's kind of just free forming with that. But maybe if you could just specify if they are hardware samplers and loopers. All right. All right, RFB asks, every time I open a plugin, I have to open it myself. It doesn't open by itself. Can you show how this can be done if the option is there? Previous version of Cubase, it opened itself. So I think probably what you want to do is get to your preferences or settings, and under VST, you'll see just I think it's under plugins maybe, open effect editor after loading it. So make sure that this is checked. So with that unchecked, if I go to add an insert effect on this particular track, we don't see the interface open when we have that preference enabled, open effect editor after loading it. I'll come here, and now when I come and we open up an EQ, that the interface automatically opens when the plugin is loaded. So again, go to your preferences or settings, and you'll see open effect under VST plugins, open effect editor after loading it. All right, so we have Brian Sawyer checking in from Goldsboro, North Carolina, soon to be Yuma, Arizona. He says, can't believe he missed a whole week of Club Cubase. Yeah, I kind of missed doing the live stream on Friday, but it was nice to have Friday night off from doing indexes after my flight, but all right, so we have the artist known as Love joining us. I see Carlos Arturo Preveda just says, that's great. Thank you, Greg. So you're welcome. All right, great to see JVI on. All right, Jesper Borgstrom just says, how to switch between the tabs in the lower zone via key commands. All right, so I always forget what it is. So let's say I hit the tab key to navigate to the lower zone. And then let's see if it's... So it's going to be Command, Option, left, right arrow, or Alt-Control left right arrow. So that would allow you, but it has to be in the active. So we see that as I scroll, we see the white outline. So make sure that the lower zone has a white outline, and it's Command, Option, left right arrow, or Alt-Control left right arrow. Then you can navigate between the tabs. All right, so we have Matt Gloss sending greetings from Oxford in the UK. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Nut27. Any news on the Nuendo 14 release? So I think that there may be an announcement coming soon. I don't think I'm able to share more than that. So maybe if you ask, there will probably be a big announcement coming up, soon. So check, maybe next week there may be an announcement that will give you an idea when it will be coming. All right, Peter from Montreal asks, I placed an instance of Supervision on my master stereo out. However, I'm unable to disable it unless I open it. All right, so let's take a look. So let's say I go to my mix console and let's place it as an insert here. Okay, so I will just kind of come over here. Let's get to inserts. So it looks like if we, so maybe not bypass, but if we hold down the Alt or Option key, that we could, so let me just, so if you want to turn it off, so it's not bypassed necessarily, so let me just check, see if other plugins behave the same way. Yeah, so you might have to turn it off, and maybe it's because it's not actually processing audio. But if you hold down the Alt or Option, you could turn it off. You could turn it off and then re-enable it. So try just holding down the Alt or Option key, and let me know how that works for you. I'll make sure to bring that to their attention, Peter. All right. All right, so we see songs of the Ivy Brothers. Hi, please explain when to use pre-faders and post-faders. Okay, so, and we often see this with effects. So let's say I have this, this drum track going on, and I want to come over, right now get rid of plugins here. All right. So I want to add an effect send to this. So I'm going to come over here. Let's add an effects channel track. All right. So let's say I want to do a reverb. Okay. So put in, let's say Revelation. All right. So now as we're doing this, we can come over to our sends of this particular track, and we're going to blend this in. So now when I adjust my fader, so right now we could right click and we could switch between pre-fader and post-fader. So right now it's in pre-fader. So as we're playing here, I'll just put this in a quick loop. We're not going to hear any of the reverb. And the reverb amount is going to be, if the fader is all the way down, we don't hear any reverb. So the level of the fader is affecting how much is going into the reverb. But when I send it to pre-fader, I could adjust this level and the reverb stays constant. So the fader, so when we see it in pre-fader, we don't, if the level is down, the level is affecting the gain structure of the send. And when it's in post fader, so right now we're in pre-fader, so my level doesn't affect the gain structure. So if I'm doing automation where we have lots of little things, that is not, my reverb can stay constant in level with pre-fader. So that's generally when you make that decision. And it's often, you know, if you want the fader level to affect the gain structure of the send. All right, Jesper Borgstrom asks, why can I not use the mouse wheel to control range of selection gain? If I could just range select and scroll my volume automation for vocals would be so much faster. Okay, so let's say, if I'm here, I could just take this. So one, you know, if we want, you know, so I'm not sure if you want like just a range, but you could just come right here. So, you know, if we want to adjust the, let's see if we can, all right, so let's say if I want to adjust, let me see, and there could be a preference that could affect this as well. Let me just check to see. All right, so we could see if we go to editing to audio, we can see use mouse wheel for event volume and fades. So let's turn that on. And now, like when I have an event selected, I could just come right over here and just use my mouse scroll wheel to adjust that. And let's see if we go to just a range here. So we haven't split this, but now if I come here and we go back, I could just simply adjust. So if you're doing it for the clip gain, make sure that you go to preferences, editing to audio, and use mouse wheel for event volume and fades. Make sure that that is checked. All right, so RFB asks, is it possible to make a key command for sampler control in the lower zone, just like the key command is modulators? So if there is a sampler track, so let's say if we have a sampler track here and I drag like this audio in, once the sampler track is selected, that's automatically updated. But let's see if we want to just open the sampler control, if we can do that from a key command. Just look for lower zone. All right, so you can say open sample editor in the lower zone. Let me assign that to my key command. So if you go to editors, you'll see open. Let me see if that's So let's see if that's just the sampler or the sample editor. Let's take a look. And I'll sign that via my MIDI remote. Yeah, it's going to be the sample editor, but again, anytime that a sampler track is added, once we, it's going to automatically, so let's say if I add a sampler track here, as soon as so let's say I'm in the mix console here, I go to the sampler track, and then if we go to edit the sample track, we could just do that. So let's see. There's open, close, sampler. So, but usually as soon as you kind of come right over here, you can be in your different types. So let's see if I had this selected and I have that, so it's not going to switch. I'll mention that, but I think that once you have the sampler control here, that as you switch between your different editors, that it's automatically open to the sampler control settings right there. But I'll make sure to pass that along. All right, QWL Music asks, can you show how to set up routing for dub style mixing? So I'm not sure if there's any specific things routing wise that you would do for dub style mixing. I'm probably not the most familiar with dub style mixing, but if there's any, I would say that the routing is going to be pretty similar. But I'm probably ignorant of if there's like particular dub style workflows. But if there's something that that you can't figure out routing wise, just let me know and I could show you how to do that. But I don't know of anything specifically for dub style routing that's different than any other routing. All right, so we see Content Scientist. It says, question, can we use Groove Agent Kit sounds in the new drum module in Cubase 14? They are two different instruments, just like we can't necessarily load, Groove Agent kits into Hallian Sonic and Hallian Sonic content into Groove Agent. While they both do similar things under the hood, there's a lot of distinct differences between the two. So they're not, like we could have 4 layers in the drum machine and Groove Agent could have up to 32 layers. So it's not intended to replace Groove Agent, but kind of augment production workflows to use in conjunction or in addition to Groove Agent. All right, great to see DaVinci Girl on from Bochum, Germany. All right, so we see from Charles S. It says, question, the way coloring tracks in Cubase works is not intuitive. Hate it. Too often when trying to colorize multiple tracks, it simply doesn't work due to something else having higher, maybe higher prio. Also, so confusing which way of changing colors. It seems to have different abilities depending on where you change it. All right, so we can think of it as being like two hierarchies. Okay, so let me just we'll do new project here. All right, so we can think of colors as being for tracks or events. So I'm going to add a number of audio tracks here. Okay, and I will just do a quick recording so we could have some events. Okay. Okay, will I go for a couple more measures? All right, so now we have events colors and we have the track colors. So if I want to change all the tracks, don't have any events selected. So if I want these all to be the same color, I could just do that, and now all of the events are changed to the same color. Now if I want to select every other track, I could hold down Control or Command, and we say, okay, I want to colorize every other track this color or this color. So whatever is selected, it will do. So if I want to come over and change an individual track's color, not work with them multiply. So if I want to just change one track at a time, we could just click right here, hold down the Alt or Option key, and we could scroll through colors. And we could also just, if we want to click here in the color area while holding down the Alt or Option key, we could choose colors for an individual track. Now if we colorize parts, so let's say I come here and we now make a copy and we move these events and we make another copy. All right, so we could also choose to colorize the events. Now if we colorize the events, let's say these are all going to be the same color. All right, so and right now I had the event selected, so the event will get priority. So I can say I want all the tracks to be red, but the chorus I want to be a different color. So now I could colorize the events, and because we have specifically colorized the events, they will override the track colors. So if I change the track colors, no events are selected, and I change the track colors to a bluish color, these ones that I've specifically chosen to be green will remain green, because I think if the logic is that if you have specifically chosen a color for an event, that you want that event to have a different color. So but if you just think of, if you want to color multiple tracks, just select the tracks and no events. And just you could go to the color tool or just select your palette right here. To change individual colors, hold down the Alt or Option, and you could scroll or just kind of Alt or Option, click in the color area. You can set the color. And if you wanted to override the track colors on events on the same tracks, you could select those particular events, and that will have a higher priority over the track so that these could have their own completely independent colors. So a lot of people want verses one color, choruses another color, verses, bridges a different color, drums all one color. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. So I think once you understand that if you specifically colorize an event, that will have a priority over the tracks, that you'll see the logic in it. All right, Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of banana nut bread ice cream. Sounds good. My wife is in Chicago this week, so. And Michael Teams says the force is with me. All right. All right, so we see a question from Songs from the Ivy Brothers. Hi, a third time. When I mix then master a song, I have to go back to the mix to fix something and resave. Why doesn't Artist 14 update the file going back to the master? Mix must be re-imported. The Okay, so read this again. When I mix and then master a song, I have to go back to the mix to fix something and resave. Why doesn't Artist 14 update the file? Going back to the master mix must be re-imported. So are you, it sounds like, let me know if I'm understanding this correctly or not, that when you're doing the mix, like you have a project, you do a mix, and then you make a change, and then are you expecting the mix to automatically be updated without having to re-export? Is it something like, okay, I have my Word document and I save it, and then I make changes and I expect the printout to change without reprinting it? So if that's the case, you will have to, export the file again. And so you would export the file again to reflect all of the new changes. So the exported file doesn't retroactively go back to look at the project. You would need to, as you would print a document, and then go back and edit the Word document or the word processor document, you would have to reprint it out to reflect those changes. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. And it's from Songs at Ivy Brothers. Great to see John Barry on from the English Riviera. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, Mark Raven says about the colors, says, I hope Greg shows you this. I did not understand the logic at first, and now I love how it works. All right. All right, so we see from just Charles, just says, doesn't matter if I want to change the color for 8 tracks, I select them all and hit the color tab, right click on the track and choose color. Only one clip is changing. So again, if you want to select multiple colors, just come here to the colors and change multiple colors there. So when you're doing it here, it's only going to do one track at a time. So if I come here, so that's not set up, that's for one track. If you want to do multiple tracks, use the color tool there. All right, so you see Val says, today I made a mistake and deleted / reset my preferences. Yeah, I mean, it's always a good idea periodically. What I do in my personal studio, like I'm getting a new laptop probably next week for work. So I'm getting a new MacBook to replace the one that I've been using on live streams the last 2.5 years. What I would do is just, one is if you go into your preferences, you could save a preset here. So that way you could save a preset, and periodically, like maybe once you get it set up again, is just to export a profile. So you see, like when I moved from my i9 MacBook to my M1 MacBook, I just simply took my profile from my i9, and that's what I'm still using with all of my settings and preferences. And then I could just import that at any time. So it's always a good idea, like once everything is working great, just save a profile, and then, if something weird happens, you could always recover all of your personal settings for Cubase. But sorry that happened to you, Val. It says he had it back to normal after 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, just reading through comments. So we see Great comments from Content Scientist and Ben Tyerman. And Pastoral Apologetics. That's such a great name. So you see DaVinci Girl just says, I just saw some minutes in the Backbone plugin that is free in Plugin Boutique. The demo was so poor in quality. The YouTube guide, can you give an overview? What I saw was just anti-promotion. So, all right, so I haven't worked extensively with Backbone, but we'll go take a quick look. So, it's kind of a drum synthesizer, but it's also going to be like a really clever sound design tool. So if we want to kind of come over here, we could have multiple layers of different drums. So we could have like, transient. So if we want to just kind of come over, and now that we have different transients, we can come over here and, if we wanted to do, now we could just say, okay, we're just going to get a new kick drum sound. So we could have there's AI algorithms. So we could just come directly over here, and now we could just say, okay, I want to add synthesis to it. So let's come over here, let's change the pitch. If you wanted to put filters. So once we're kind of here, we could just start sculpting the sound. So let's change the format. We could go to kind of our level settings, and there's, and you could do this kind of for multiple layers. So let's say, okay, I want to now layer this with this particular sound. And as we start going through presets here, like some of my favorite examples of Backbone. So, a lot of people use it just kind of as a kick, but for sound design functionality, let's come over here. Now we could adjust the filter. So if we say, okay, let's come over here to our pitch. And even if you want to come over to say, okay, you just want to do claps. I like a lot of the Robert Dudzik stuff. So let's say you want to do, and a lot of these you could have kind of like different samples are triggered when the note is released overall. So you're going to have like your different sample editing that you could do. So once you're in here, you could do resynthesis and be able to kind of come over here. And so lots of great stuff that you could do with this. So let's just say, okay, so as soon as you want to go into different parts to edit, you can have all sorts of great stuff. So let's say, okay, you want to do different kicks. A lot of people use it for that. And now if we wanted to, completely randomize the kick and say, okay, now let's come over here. Let's So really fast, easy way to kind of shape sounds. So, and even if you want to come over here, you could have like when you release a key, have it trigger a different sample as well. So I can hold the key down as soon as it's released, it could trigger a completely different sound. So a really wonderful kind of sound design tool on Backbone. So definitely worth checking out. It's part of Absolute, sold separately, and part of the plugin boutique promotion going on. All right, so we see, does Cubase 14 have bass management and time alignment now? So usually most of the bass management, there's could be different. So time alignment can mean different aspects, but when it's so if it's bass management for dealing with, let's say for like immersive audio. So let me just. So if I wanted to come over here for doing kind of do my setup assistant here, and let's say if I wanted to come over here, we'll listen to it binaurally. So now that we go to our panner here, we could just easily kind of come over here and we could set the amount that's going to the LFE directly here, so we could see so you could set the LFE as we're working with your immersive panning. So and if you're doing time alignment, I'm not sure if that's with like having like alignment of audio. So let's say if I activate this, that now like if we have files that are like out of time, we just all right, so let's say now if I want these files to do time alignment, so I'm not sure if this is what you mean by the time alignment, we could just come over here. I'm going to set this as a reference track, and I could have the other ones as targets, and we could just align the audio so that they're all lined up. So, or if you mean time alignment for like a monitoring path, so maybe you could specify that. That'd be helpful. All right, just. All right, reading through comments here. Okay, and my chat field jumped down, so. All right, Steve Green asks, hi Greg, is there a way of taking a bass guitar event and converting it into MIDI? Thanks. So yeah, I'll just come over here. Let's okay, so say I will take this track here and let me just
Do you recall?
all right, so I'm going to go to the sample editor here, and let's go to VariAudio. And then within the VariAudio tab, I'm just going to come right over here and go to the functions, and we'll choose to extract MIDI. And it's going to automatically place it at the bottom here. So if we wanted to listen to our bass part, and if I wanted to just quickly load up an instrument here, sorry, let me just, we'll load a bass instrument. Right, and sometimes I have to just knock this up an octave. You may have to transpose. So let's see. Now I'll take that bass part and I'll just knock it down to the Hallian track. All right, let me just go back and let me just and we'll listen to that. All right, so let me just, so here's a real bass being blended in and the extracted MIDI, and it's fretless bass, so actually so you can see that you can, so once again, just kind of go to the bass part, go into VariAudio, let it do its analysis, and under choose functions, extract MIDI. All right, so we see question: if I edit audio in Isotope RX11 and overwrite original, why doesn't it represent that in a clip that's in my Cubase project, please? So I don't use RX11, but are you using it as an ARA extension? So I know that kind of Isotope had their own kind of editor workflow and kind of wasn't doing ARA, or wasn't doing ARA for VST3, so I'm not sure if it's been updated on their end. So I think it's going to be, so if so I think just about everyone is doing ARA for VST, so I'm not sure if they are or not. But I don't have a license, so I haven't really worked with it. Sorry about that. All right, we have Hamo 1974 sending greetings from Finland. All right, Ben Tyerman asks, Greg, I'd like to know how to import a drum kit into the featured drum machine or using Groove Agent from WAV files. So there isn't a direct translation, but let's say if we want to do, I will come over. And if we wanted to get audio files that kind of worked with that, so I'll add a Groove Agent kit. And again, they're like different instruments, so they kind of do the same things, and there's a lot of crossover kind of under the hood. There's a lot of different tasks. So let's say I want to do maybe Beat Agent kit. So let's say come here. Okay, so I'm going to put a note. Do 2-measure event. And let's say I want this to be C1. Okay, so now let's say I'll copy this over. All right, and I'm just going to hit the arrow key up. Let's hit the sorry. So double click here, so I can do a Control A, move the arrow up. So I'm basically just placing taking this, so Control A, up. Control or Command A, up. All right, so just kind of build it kind of like this. I'll do just a couple more. All right, so let's say we have these. All right, so if I want this as my Groove Agent kit, one of the things I could do now is we could export selected events. I'm going to put them into a folder. All right. Okay, and I'll just do them as separate events. Export. I think I gave them all roughly the same name. All right, so now when we're in, let's come over here to media. We'll go to our file browser. And we'll say, let's go to our desktop. Let me see if I'll just look for the files here real quick. Okay, so now if we go to our drum machine, let's create a new drum track. Now we can just drag each of these to the drum machine like so. Yeah, let's see if we can just grab these, and so we can put multiple. So now so you could do that. Now another thing that, some people, so now we could have access to be able to treat. So if I wanted to now take this sample and be able to do pitch control on it, so whatever you want to come over here and do like the different editing. So if you want to EQ, and you could now save that as a kit. Now, what a lot of people miss is the fact that I could take if I go to add an instrument track to Groove Agent, I could choose to have this as a pattern event. And now when I load up a kit, let's say from Beat Agent, so a lot of people think that you can't use the pattern editor. So now if I just kind of double click here, I could kind of create an event, and now when I go to edit the event, we can just choose to add additional sounds there, and I could program this just like so. Let's say if I'm here, I could program my Groove Agent patterns. So if I wanted to come over here, so I could still kind of take advantage of the and use this so you can kind of come over and still use the pattern editor with Groove Agent very easily. So, but if you wanted to do that, you could just, render the files and drag and drop them into the drum machine. But again, you're not limited to the pattern editor for the drum machine. All right, Benjamin Hofstein from New York City. Is there any way to extract or modify a tempo map that is embedded with an audio file if, for example, the audio is previously tempo mapped and set definition from tempo is used? All right, so let me just import a quick audio file here. Okay, so I'll add a tempo track here. Or I'll just do something that's more obvious beat-wise. Let me just... Okay, I'll just build something here quickly. Okay, so let's say this is going to be, all right, so I'm going to, let's say we'll listen to this. Just change my transport. All right, so I'm going to render this all as a single file, and let me draw in a tempo map here. And now I want to, so let's say we're going to start at 120. Okay, so let's do our set definition from tempo. So go to my audio to advanced. So now we're basically going to embed these tempo changes into the file. Okay, so now let's take a look at this. And let's look at it in our pool window. Okay, so we see that we have that. So let's look at it in our pool window again. All right, so right now let's see if we choose to, we choose to remove unused media. Make sure we're looking at the right one. Okay, so let's say if I want to come over, let's say I have my tempo now set to 99 beats a minute, and I have this turned off, and we go, let's say, into our pool window. All right, so I'm going to type in 99 beats a minute. Okay, so we see the audio tempo can't be changed. Let's all right, let me see if we could change it in the media bay. Sometimes we could change it in media bay as well. So let's see if we could. Okay, let me find the file here quickly. All right, so this is our file here. So maybe if we just come over here, so let's say if I want this to be 99 beats a minute, if we go to tempo, and we can say it's going to be 1 bar. So I think if you select it and change it directly in the media bay, that might work. I could play around with it more if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. But I think that changing the definition in the media bay may do the trick for you. Okay. All right, so Content Scientist says, is there an officially recommended basic course to learn Cubase? I think by the time a basic course is completed and released, that there's a new version of Cubase that's out like a month later. So I think that a lot of times the courseware is really far behind what the actual functionality and keeping up to date. So I think, if you watch, I think that this is a good format for asking any particular questions you have. You could ask any question at any time, but you could search. I would think that you probably are better off looking just on YouTube and check out, like One Man and His Songs. I think is a really good way to do that as well. So, which I think probably Jazz Dude is pointing out as well. All right, Tom Kowalski asks, greetings from Pittsburgh. I have a 90-minute live recording to mix with 18 songs. Is there a way to create a tempo map for the project? So yeah, as long as, you could take, any recording that you want. So let's say if we have a live, I don't have something that I could probably play that's copyright friendly, but really all you'd have to do, is like, let's say it'd be the same principle for a full mix or a multi-track. I could do some drums from this one, I think. So let's say we have song 1 through 18, and we are just kind of playing along here. We'll activate this project. So even if you wanted to just kind of take like the kick drum or overheads I usually work with. So let's say if I'm here, I could just say, okay, let's go to my project and do tempo detection. And now if I turn on the click, and we can say, okay, offbeat correction. So, just kind of doing, you could do like the whole file. A lot of times people may break down the 18 songs and do tempo detection just on a range, but you could definitely do like the tempo detection on all of the files and have one tempo track that could give you the tempo track for all 18 songs in the live recording. All right, we see Stella is snoring like Raven's dog. All right. All right, so we see a question when Cubase Supervision shows minus 0.3 TP dBFS on the TP scale. It's usually 0.8 or positive 0.8 dBFS TP when exported. I don't really get why Supervision is the first plugin on my control room. Check, let me know exactly which, I'm not sure which meter that you're using exactly. So let's say if we have this going on, and we have Supervision, and also where Supervision is in the control room. So if I'm coming over here, so let's say if I have my Supervision here, so, and Supervision could be different if you're using it in the main control room versus like the monitors. So, we could adjust, like if I come here and adjust the output level, if it's in the monitors, that this changes, but the Supervision that we see, so if I continue to kind of play and my control room is down, if I have Supervision in my first slot of monitors, it's affected by the gain structure of the control room. Whereas if it's in kind of the main inserts, it's not affected. So maybe it could be the placement of where it is. So, within the control room. So if I have, this is showing, if we're in monitors, it's showing what we're hearing out of the monitors. Whereas this is just showing what's actually going on in the mix as well. So if you could tell me exactly, just tell me where exactly it is going into, where you have it inserted, because different areas that you insert it can show different results. All right, so you see Troca just says, just a clarification on his looper and sampler. It says, yeah, the looper and sampler, both hardware. Looper is okay as slave, not master. Wondering if sampler feeding Cubase 14 and then Cubase 14 looper is a mess since purpose to record audio from both machines. So there's a really good chance that most samplers aren't designed to actually play in sync with the DAW. When I was working in studios before I started with Cubase way back when, like very early 90s, people would use, I was just talking with Grandmaster Flash about this yesterday, and how like the DAW for all the editing was an Akai S1000 or Akai S950. But those, once the audio is triggered, the audio kind of plays on its own clock, and it's not going to be synchronized with Cubase, because unless you have like the word clock, so those two devices aren't going to result, those two audio clocks of the sampler and Cubase aren't going to resolve unless you have a word clock out from your audio interface going into Cubase, or a digital audio connection that could be used as a clock source. Most samplers don't do that because they just kind of play the sample and it plays on its own clock, completely independently of kind of like what the master clock would be in the project. So it could be hard to get the sampler to sync in a scenario like that. So sometimes you may get it to work, and then you play back again, and you keep playing it back, and then it's not, every time it's going to play a little bit differently. So. All right, wonderful to see Millard Brown from Philadelphia area. Congratulations if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I was thinking of you when watching the Eagles win Super Bowl. All right, wonderful to see Matt Elston on. See, Mark Raven just says, Greg, congrats on the new computer. I don't think it's anything to be happy about. Just my lease is up for my work computer. But so it's just money. So to me, like being able to buy something isn't worthy of congratulations. So, but thanks for the kind words regardless. Okay, so you see Trocaj says, now I see why. Greg says Alt instead of Control, real Apple eater. So I usually try to mention both modifiers. Personally, like my studio is on Windows 11, and my work computer is on Windows 10 or on Mac OS. So I use both of them all the time. All right, artist known as Love just says, when creating a second profile on the same computer, what is the best way to install Cubase on the second profile? Is it all the same? So, we could think of like you could run 3 Cubase licenses, so you could run 3 Cubase licenses on, you could run 3 instances on a single license. Now, if you needed to have a different My Steinberg account, on a computer where you have another My Steinberg account, you would probably want to just go to your activation manager and make sure that you log in. You want to log out of sign out of one account and log in with a different account. So if you have someone that's coming over, they could just simply log in with their My Steinberg credentials and sign out and deactivate their licenses. If this is specifically about profiles, as in like our profile manager where you could save kind of all of your personal Cubase settings, that could be on any of the different licenses. So, so you could save that independently on multiple computers. It's not going to be tied to a particular computer. You could import it and export it. A lot of people save it on like a USB flash drive. So generally, most people would run, if you have like a studio machine, a home machine, and a laptop, you could run 3 different licenses of Cubase or three different instances from a single license. So let me know if that makes sense for you, Artist Knows Love. All right, you see the Artist Knows Love giving a big woof to Stella, who I saw earlier was snoring. Guess we put Stella to sleep. Calming voice, hopefully. All right, so you see, question, can I color all the drum pads in a drum track at once, or must I do it individually? So let's take a quick look. I think it might be individual, but let's see if we can figure something out. Okay, so let's say we have all right, let me just load up a quick preset here. So I think it's going to be individual. Let me see if I could, because I think we can only select one pad at a time. So I think it might be individual, but I'll make sure to pass that along as a feature request. All right, so this Ninja Scared asks, is it possible to zoom in and out of samples within the drum track? So I think that most people, when we go to, I don't think that it's kind of not really set up for as much sample editing. So let's say if I just want to come over. So if I have that, I don't think it's really does a lot of sample editing here. I think the intention is most people would do the sample editing externally and then kind of drag and drop the edited sample to the pad. All right. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Let me find my spot. All right, so Ben Tyron just says, haven't used Align Audio yet, but can't wait to use it on a project. He says he wished he knew about it years ago. It would save him a lot of time on projects. All right, so we have Rich Schweitzer sending greetings from West Palm Beach. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see this Ninja Scare says when using drum track, it tends, I see, it tends rock, slow my loop cycle. Any reason why? So I'm not sure. Tends RK, slow my loops cycle. So let me know what RK loop cycle is. So, when kind of using this, I think it's kind of independent of, if it's the loop that's here. So I'm not sure if you're dragging like an audio loop into Groove Agent, like where you want to kind of come over here. So I'm not sure if so maybe if you could rephrase the question from this Ninja Scared about the RK slow my loop cycle. All right, so you see drum machine template, and Jazz Dude wants me to do the Euclidean. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll just load up a quick preset here. So let's say, okay, we have a drum machine. All right, so one of the cool things that we could do in the pattern editor is just kind of come over here. So one, it's kind of ties directly in. So let's say I want to first come over and just say, okay, we're building a particular pattern here. Let me just grab my drum machine track here. Sorry. I'll just do new project. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll add a drum track. And we'll do this as a pattern event. Okay, so we go to our pattern editor here. So now let's say I just want to put in like some kicks. We'll do a typical kind of 4 on the floor. So now if we want to add different elements in, so let's say, okay, I want to throw in, let's say my snare here. And let's put in a clap as well. All right, so when we want to add in different elements, we could add it in kind of randomly or using kind of Euclidean. So if we want to just kind of dial this knob, so as I move this more over to the right, it's going to add in more elements on that particular track. And it will do in kind of Euclidean patterns. So the more over to the right, the more it gets kind of filled in, but it's still kind of like a musical mode. And if I wanted to add, let's say, like a percussion sound, I could go into randomization. I could just roll the dice. And if we want to be able to come over here, let's put in snap, let's roll the dice, and we could just kind of come right over here. So, but when we want to kind of put things in, and we could have these be for like different as we roll the dice. I want this to be maybe for open hi-hat patterns, and as we randomize. And we could also, so as we would select like a different sound, I could just come right over here, put it in Euclidean, and we could bring in more rhythmically active elements. And if we unsolo that, and even if we wanted to completely randomize patterns, we could just roll the dice here and have complete randomness as well. So all sorts of great stuff that you could do with the patterns here. All right. All right, so we have Tommy Valenko asks, "Hi Greg, is there a macro to change every lowest note in specific chord 1 octave higher to invert chord higher or lower, positive position through whole track?" All right, so let me just throw in some quick chords. All right, let me just... Okay, so I'm gonna come over here. We'll say chords to MIDI. Just add a MIDI track here. Okay, I'll join all these. All right, so let's say if we want to come over here, let's make this much larger so we could see. All right, so I think if we go to like chord editing here, that we could say, okay, let's come over here. All right, I think that there's, let me see. All right, so I select these chords here, and let's say I just want to do inversions, so I can move up or move down. So I could select the chords and just come over here and say, okay, let's move up. And now we could just take, so I could select the chords, and in the chord editing tab, we could say, okay, I want to move that down, or let's move it up. So we could just take kind of the same chords and we could just do different inversions of those particular chords. So we could just kind of come over here and change that. So I think that's kind of an easy way to just kind of do it. If you select the chord right there, you could move up or move down and change the chord inversions just like that. So I don't think you need to make a macro, or you could do it through a project a lot. You could do it through a logical editor, but just doing the chord editing here, I think, can make a big difference, especially if you want different chord voicings for piano versus guitar, so that they're different. It's very easy. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, Keith Young asks, I guess says, Cubase or QC14. Hello, Greg. Is it possible to automate a number of tracks at the same time? Let's say volume. So, a lot of times if you're using a mouse, you may have a hard time kind of, working with that. Let me just open up a project here real quick. But if you have a control surface, like I have a Korg Nano control, and I'll show you what we could do here. So let me just... All right, let's see if this is... It's not the project I was thinking of. Let me just... Okay, so I'm just going to have my Korg Nano control. So if you need to move, multiple parts, you'll need, obviously with the mouse, you can move one element at a time using your mouse. But if we wanted to take, let's say, a kind of a large project here, and I'm going to go to my MIDI remote, and then I'm just going to come over here and use my mixer, and this will be like, channels 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and then I could bank over. So just kind of using the bank controls. So let's say if I want to go to my mixer here, so now I could just take like my first 8 tracks here. So let's say if I want to, and I could so now I could just kind of take so I could just come over here and use one control surface and be able to edit. So I'll just take the existing automation off here. So I'm just taking my little control surface here and moving these, and I get to my mixer. I can now control. So very easy to, but you will need something more than a mouse, like a MIDI keyboard that has like 8 knobs or faders. But as long as you have multiple faders in a control surface, you could control that easily inside of Cubase. All right, so we see Solnoe. It says, hey, I see new pan visual in Mixer. So it might have been when we were doing the Atmos guitar stuff. So if you're doing immersive projects, you can have this panner, so where we could see our different channels here. We could also adjust our channel height as needed, so we can come over here and make adjustments there. But that's when the program is set for working in immersive. All right, Mark Rabin just says, anyone have hints on Loopback to capture reference tracks from YouTube or Spotify, etc.? I have not had much luck with this. So, like, you know, it really could depend on your audio interface. So let's say if I want to, we'll do a new project here. And I will, first thing I want to do is let's go to my system settings. So, and this could be on your Mac or PC, be similar concepts. And I want, I'm going to take my main system here and go to the Steinberg. So my audio interface automatically shows up as 3 different drivers. I'm going to say streaming music for my main output. So I'm going to, we'll pop over to YouTube. Okay, so let's say we want to.
With several plugins designed to mix creatively and enhance your workflow. Let's check.
Okay, so I'm going to now add an audio track here. And for its input, I want it to do URC streaming left and right stereo. We're going to make it a stereo track. I'm going to send it to my stereo output. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record here. I'll go into YouTube. We'll play the audio.
Mount. The first plugin I want to show you is the new volume plugin.
All right, so now we'll go ahead and stop recording and we'll listen to our playback in Cubase. And let me just make sure this is being routed correctly. So, but now as we look at it, we should be able to, let me just check my output routing here. So it looks great. So, but that's really all you would need to do to capture the audio straight in. So it really could depend on how your audio interface is set up for that. So I think you have the SSL too, so you may have something similar, Mark, with that. Okay, Mike Braley asks, hi Greg, is there a way to save the whole signal chain for a VST instrument, say Groove Agent with individual outs, buses, and effects? Okay, so let's take a look. So let's come over here. Let's add an instrument track. I want to make sure I didn't set this out here. Okay, so let me just check my routing here. I think probably. So there's our audio recording there that we just did.
first plugin I want to show you is the new volume plugin.
All right, so let's say we want to say we have multiple outputs here. Output 3, and I will, let's say, okay, we have output 4. Okay, and I can see my outputs here. Let's also change some of these outputs and add effects in Cubase. So we'll go to our amp section here. And let's go to our mixer. Say, okay, we want a bit of reverb on the kick. So we'll just come here to edit. We'll say aux 1. And we want a lot of reverb on the snare. And we want to put a delay on our hi-hat. I'm gonna blow off Grandmaster Flash calling. Come right back. So you see our, and these are going to different outputs here. So we see. All right, so now what I want to do is, let's see if I save this as a track preset. So I'm going to right click, save track preset. Let's go to a new project. So I can go to my media, we'll get to user presets, track presets. Let me just see if it's going to show up under. All right, here's our February 11th. I'll just drag that over. Didn't like that. I'll try it again. All right, so we go to media to user presets, track presets, VST instrument. All right, and now when we come over here, our output routing, our effects, everything is automatically preserved. So just right click, and you want to save a track preset, and then to find that track preset later, just jump home, go to user presets, track presets, VST instruments, and then you could just double click, and that instrument, the Groove Agent or other instruments with all the routing, all of their effects on the routing can automatically be preserved for you. Hang on just 1 second. Sorry about that. It's Grandmaster Flash. I had to give him a call right after the live stream. Okay. So you see Troca is heartbroken. I don't believe in his sampler. So, maybe it'll work. It depends how long that you want to sample. So. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Let me just go back to where I was. Okay. All right, so Uno Memento just says about 25 minutes ago, we're about to hit 100 likes. All right. All right, you see Troca is going for dinner. Thank you for being the best, Greg. Later's peeps. All right. Thanks to Jazz, dude. All right, so we have Roland Stuff checking in from Sussex in south coast of England, saying, I hope you're well. So I'm doing great, thanks. Memento wants people to whack the like button. Okay. Wonderful to see Michael Pierce on from Grand Chapel Studios in England. All right, Roland Stuff says, hi Greg, can the drum editor be loaded with a kit already being used in Groove Agent in a project if you really like the Groove Agent sounds but want to alter the rhythm with the drum editor flexibility? So let's say if we want to save it as a track preset, just like what we just did a minute ago. So let's add an instrument track. Let's say, okay, I want my Groove Agent. Let's add a track. So I want to start off with, let's come over here. So let's say I want to play this pattern here. Okay, and I have gone through here and let's create a drum map. All right, so now let's say I'll just stop the pattern. Okay, so let's say if we have, what I could do now is, let me see, I may have created this. We just created another one. I'm not going to do it as a pattern. I'm going to do it as MIDI event. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to come over here again, create the drum map from the instrument. So let's say I want to okay, so we'll call this track Roland Stuff. Okay, just make sure I'm understanding this right. Can the drum editor be loaded with kit already being used in Groove Agent in a project? So what I would do is just simply save this as a track preset. So we'll say Roland's Stuff. All right, we'll hit OK. Let's come over here. I'm going to remove all the tracks in the project. And now when I come over here to Media Bay, I could just say, let's go to User Presets, Track Presets, VST Instruments, and we may have to refresh. But let me just pop over to Media Bay real quick. So let's say user content. So we'll say track presets, instrument. I'll just rescan this disk here. And then we see the Roland stuff preset. So now when I just come here and we double click, we could have that. I didn't save it with the drum map. But then, so let me just go ahead and so let's just jump back here. So, but at that point, that's all you would need to do. So then you could be starting off right where you want to be. So you see Mark Rabin says he might need to install a new driver for the Loopback for his SSL2 Plus. It's replaced by Sweetwater 2 times before the upgrade. Sorry you're having problems with that. It's always not fun. All right, Jimmy Seville asks, I received a message that there is no internet connection, but the computer is connected. By the way, great job, Greg. I've been lurking for years. Well, thanks for popping in. So I assume that this might be in the hub. So we come here to new project where it's not connecting. So sometimes, there was like a security certificate update that needed to be. So let's just pop over. I think we go to so there is a recent change, and so let's say I think it was fairly recent, but let's just say so I'm not sure if you're on Mac or PC. Yeah, so you see December 17th is required. So there's this, please download, open the Global Sign Certificate Installer. It'll automatically update the outdated security certificate. So check this. So if you just kind of go to the Steinberg support and search for Hub, you could see kind of the download for that. So let me know if that, I think that may do the trick for you if you're on Mac. If not, let me know. Okay. See, discussion. Mark Raven's interested in what people are recreationally listening to. Jazz Dude was listening to Soft Machine's third album recently. All right, so wonderful to see Pablo on from Galicia, España. So we have 3/4 of Hot Mess on. Michael Pierce says Grandmaster Flash needs some advice today. So yeah, I've been helping him out a lot recently. So he's kind of get back into doing a bunch of remixes. So great guy. So you see a feature request from John Barry about kind of folders or scrollable for quantized presets. Yeah, I'll make sure to pass that on again. It just never seems to be the highest priority. If you go, oh, I have modulators or a folder structure for presets for quantizing, I think modulators wins out, but it's nice to kind of, those little things make a big difference. I'll make sure to pass that along. See, Pablo says, please stop using that Groove Agent library. His Groove Agent is augmenting. So there's so many great libraries. So. Okay. All right, so let's, I'm going to go to some questions that were mailed in advance. I think we're caught up with questions. So let me open up a quick project. All right, so one of the questions that we had mailed in is someone was asking for like an easy way to kind of clean up a MIDI bass part. So let's look at this MIDI bass part. We'll listen to it. All right, so not a hateful MIDI part, but there's two things that the person wanted to do. One is when there were overlaps, they wondered if there was a way to stop like one note from starting on top of while another note is still sounding, because probably a bass player wouldn't intentionally do that, or if they did, they would maybe in a recording redo the take to make it a cleaner performance. And they also wanted the ability to make the notes last, to extend the length until the next note starts. So this is kind of a typical edit that you would do to kind of clean up a MIDI bass performance. So what we could do here is kind of two different moves. One is if we go to MIDI to functions, we could choose to restrict polyphony. So we'll see under MIDI functions, restrict polyphony, and we're going to say just to one voice of polyphony. That cut out all the notes that were hanging over top of each other. So if we look at it visually, we could see like these notes here, these notes here. So when I'll just say we'll select all these notes, go to MIDI to functions, and restrict polyphony. We'll set that to 1, and all the overlaps will now stop. Now, if we want to extend the length of the bass note until the next note starts, and this is almost a way of having like compression on a bass part, but we could kind of do it with the MIDI, so where we don't have these gaps where the notes are dying out. So if we wanted to extend the notes over until the next note starts, I could just come right over here. Let's get to MIDI to functions to legato. So now if we want to listen to our bass part, we can come right over here. So if we undo those two steps, we can hear that this will probably sound a lot more sloppy. And kind of like a sequenced part. And again, if we the bass never loses energy in the low end, and it's a great supportive element. So again, I would do the MIDI functions, restrict polyphony, followed by legato. And you can fix a lot of MIDI bass parts so that they sit better in your track. All right, on the last live stream, we had a question about, I think it might have been Benny, who had asked for if there was a way, like, if we have MIDI events here in a particular, I'll just make this a little more obvious here. So let's say we have MIDI events and we want to trim so our last note of the MIDI event is here, our first note is here, and let's say we wanted to trim the size of the events based upon the first note and the last note within the event, so that we could kind of almost like a detect silence function. All right, so came up with a macro to do this. Okay. All right, so let me actually show the macro instead of running it. Probably make more sense. All right, so the macro is going to be we'll come over here. We'll say trim events to MIDI notes. All right, so what I want to do is to have the macro, and again, we want to trim the MIDI event, and we're going to have the event selected first, and then we want to trim this particular event so that the start is exactly where the first note is and it ends right where it is. So we're going to open up the key editor. We're going to select all of the notes. We're going to come over and we're going to say our transport locators to selection. So that's going to move the left and right locators to encompass the start and last notes. I'm going to close the key editor. We're going to go to the transport, move to the left position, which is the very beginning. We're going to split at cursor. And then we're going to navigate to the left, which would select the split event before. We're going to delete that event. Then we're going to transport, go to the right locator. We're going to split at cursor again, and then we're going to delete the event. So instead of doing this multiple times for this process, we could have this as a macro. So when I select this event, I could just run the macro and it's automatically trimmed to the exact length of the MIDI data within the part. So if I want to kind of do the same thing here, again, just run the macro, the excess parts, the excess beginning and excess ending of the parts are automatically deleted as part of the macro. So again, editors, we want to open the key editor in the window, So it opens the key editor. We're going to select all the events, set their left and right locators to those particular events. We're going to close the key editor, go to the left locator, split. We're going to navigate to the left because when we split, we need to take this selected event and select a previous event, which we're then going to delete. We're going to go to the transport and go to the right locator. We're going to split the cursor, and that event to the right will be selected, and then we just delete. So instead of doing these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 steps, repeatedly or manually cutting, we could just simply come right over there and just run that single macro. All right. All right, so in our question, I want to purchase Cubase for my Android phone. Do I do this through my Steinberg account via my computer? What is the correct process as it'll be installed onto my phone? So, generally when we're doing iOS devices, you would have to buy, I won't say the term monopoly, but, if you want to have something that's on your iOS device, you're going to have to buy it through the Apple App Store. And if you want something to be on your Android device, you would need to purchase it through the Google Play Store. So you need to go to the Google Play Store and just simply purchase it there. And then it could be available on all of your Android devices. So if you have a tablet, if you have, a phone, your Cubase will be able to be available on all those different devices. Okay, next question. Hi Greg, big fan of your live stream Q&As, which helped me a lot, but there's one big problem that I don't think you've covered or I missed it. I play various acoustic instruments, guitar, melodeon, whistles, and recording Cubase 13 Pro. I regularly make up tunes on one of these instruments and want to record it. Excuse me. Need my coffee. Sorry. So I want to record with a guide. Let me just get back to where I was. I regularly make up the tunes on one of these instruments, then want to record it with a guide or a percussive track to keep me in time. I am a reasonable player, but make mistakes, note and rhythm-wise. I want to capture the tunes as best I can for others to hear. The problem is that it takes me ages to find a suitable rhythm track to match the style of the swing on my tune. A 4/4 beat is not enough for me to lean on. When recording, I'd like to find a rhythm in Groove Agent, say, and have in Groove Agent that I can quickly run with. I do sometimes try audio loops. Often it clashes a little bit with the rhythm in my head. I know Cubase, you can extract a custom quantize preset from a piece of audio, and presumably from MIDI 2 that only creates a few rhythmic sign points, but in a bar rather than say every 16th. I would like to quantize live audio recordings as. Okay, so let's say I want to I'll just open up a quick Groove Agent pattern here. Okay, so let's find something with kind of a unique groove to it here. So let's say All right, so I'm just going to drag like this rhythm as MIDI over. All right, excuse me. So let's take this and, all right, so I'm going to make sure that we're dropping this right on the grid. Okay, so we're going to have this particular pattern play. All right, and let's say I have an audio recording. All right, let's find maybe like a guitar part. All right, so we'll try this. Okay, so let's say, one is, we could place it kind of, let's say they're roughly in the same. So let's say they're not quite grooving. This sounds okay. So we could kind of do it both ways. So if I come over here, I could take like the MIDI pattern and I could drag and drop. And if we wanted to apply that feel of the MIDI to the audio, just make sure that we have the audio warp on. And now I would quantize the audio, and now that's going to So if I wanted to undo that, and we can see that the parts have shifted, and I wanted to do the opposite, I could just kind of come over here. We could drag the audio file over and now quantize the drums to match the audio. So either way, I think that you get kind of, great results utilizing that. So. Okay. All right, so next question we have, hi Greg, how to create a macro for these commands. Append two automation tracks at selected track. Select parameter LC frequency, select parameter turn on LQ frequency, and copy the low cut frequency automation from previous track at cursor to copy volume automation from previous track at cursor. So I'm not sure if we could do this, but let's give it a shot. So let's say I want to, we'll duplicate this track. So let's say if we have compression, we'll do some of the automation so we can copy that. Okay, so let's say. Okay, let me just put this in automation. All right, let me just. Okay, so let me just come here and we'll automate. Okay, so we have that automation on. All right, so I'm not sure. Let's see if we could open up the specific. Okay, so we have our two automation sources here. Let me just adjust this so we can see the automation a little better. Okay, so those are our two automation sources. We turn it on and off. And so let's see. So I don't think that we could select these in a macro, but let me just give it a shot. So let's go to our project logical editor. And let's say we want to select media type is equal to automation. That name contains we'll say name contains LC on. And we will say or name contains like LC freak for frequency. All right, so let's say if we can do this. Yeah, so I'm not sure if we can. All right, let me just put a dash. Okay, so we could select those. All right, so now let's say we want to navigate down. Okay, so I have those open. Let's try paste at origin. Okay, so let's come here. And let's see if there's all right, so let me take this. We'll try. Not sure if we need to. So let's see if we have these two lanes open here. If we could. All right, let's go ahead and copy. We just so we'll come over here, just try. Okay, so I have this. I want this automation to go down. Let's see if we can. All right, so say all right, so come here, we're going to select so say if we copy here, so we have this automation. Select it, and if we want to paste it here, let me just try. Try Alt V. Yeah, I'll try to continue to play around with it. We might be able to do it, but you may have to have a lot of conditions kind of set up. Whereas if you kind of come over here and do a select all events, copy, paste at origin, and then come over here, select all events, copy on the selected lane, and move down. So, but I'll work with it while I'm on my trip and an evening in San Antonio, see if I could get it dialed in a little more. All right, let me jump back to other questions, again, you can send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so you see from Roland stuff, thanks for answering my groove agent question, Greg, but even more for the demo and tidying up that bass part. I never looked inside those MIDI function options. Thanks, Greg. Okay, reading through comments here. Take a look outside real quick for my doorbell cam, see if it's snowing yet. You're supposed to get a pretty good snowstorm. Oh yeah, it's snowing pretty good. We already have an inch or two since our live stream started. All right, so wonderful to see Gareth on from Bilbao, Spain. All right, everyone at Hot Mess is present. See, Fly-V just says, ooh, trim events to MIDI notes. I got that one added. All right, you see the new Hot Mess album will finally arrive this year, so looking forward to playing some bass on it. Okay, reading through comments. All right, Roland Stuff says, quick question. Greg, is there an easy way to transfer a drum editor pattern using Cubase 14 in one project into another? It would save a lot of time as I have it all set up. All right, so let's say if we have a new pattern here, do a new project. Okay, so let me just all right, I'll roll the dice, we'll get a random pattern. Okay, so all right, so if we want to save this, I think what you could do is maybe, drag it to the project window here. And let's see if we save this as like a track preset or a MIDI loop. Let's see if we save it as a MIDI loop. Maybe not. But let's save this as let's see if we can save it as a track preset. Or we could save it as we could probably save it as let's export it as a, we'll come over here, let's export as selected tracks. All right. So let's copy the media files. So let's call this pattern groove. Feb 11th, 2025. Okay. So now let's get to a new project and see if we can import a track archive. And now we'll come right over here, export it, and we'll play it back, and we look at it, it's all there. So you can, I know it's kind of a bit of a workaround, but if you export the selected tracks, so export selected tracks and then import a track archive, then you could recall the pattern. All right, Gareth wants everyone to excavate the like button. And Gareth was like number 111. All right, Mark Raven says his dog Stella will have questions about the logical editors next week. He's been studying, so that's good. Hopefully I'll have answers. We see Mark Raven has to POA to pick up his grandkids at school, so that's a good thing to do. All right, so Gareth just said sent one song as email. Don't know if you got it okay. I don't remember getting it, Gareth, but if you want to send it again, I should have time like early next week to get a bass part done. Sorry if I missed it. All right, Gareth says should have about 7, so sounds good. I'll be done with my travels on Saturday night. So you see Jazz Dude, did you get yesterday's email about trivia prizes? Yes, I did. I think I have everyone's collected now, so I'll try to get it all followed up. Sorry about that. All right, so we see Roland Stuff says, many thanks for answering all my questions today, Greg. Great birthday presents for me. Well, happy birthday, and thanks for celebrating it with being on a live stream. We know you probably had better options than this, so. Gareth is asking where I'm traveling to, so I'll be going to San Antonio, Texas, to speak at the Texas Music Educators Association. I'll be doing Dorco presentations for music educators in Texas, so it should be fun. I haven't been to Texas in a while, so. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions. I think we're out of time. So once again, there won't be a live stream on this upcoming Friday. After that, we should be going our normal Tuesdays and Fridays schedule until like April. I'll be on doing a spring break vacation like April 11th for a week. So we may miss a couple live streams then, but we should be good for the rest of February and the rest of March for our normal schedule. So Gareth says, can I be a music educator in Texas? I think you could probably sneak in if you're in San Antonio. So, and if anyone's in San Antonio, let me know. If you want to get in, you could probably just walk in. It's not, security isn't so tight. All right. So we'll see. Let's see if there's any more questions that kind of creep in. If not, we'll wrap up just about 2 or 3 minutes early. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you hit the like button. And we'll see everyone back on next Tuesday. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. And thanks for all the wonderful questions. And we look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday. Everyone, please take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.